The story begins in a dimly lit nightclub, with flashing neon lights and the pulsing beat of music filling the air. Among the attendee there is Yeonju at the bar, her eyes scanning the crowd, her posture tense as if anticipating something. Suddenly, a group of people approaches her with hostile intent, and within moments, they attack. Despite the dangerous situation, Yeonju manages to defeat all the attackers. The next day, as Yeonju is on her way to the office, she meets on Yoo-jun, who is also a prosecutor like her. However, Yoo-jun knows about her actions at the nightclub the previous night, that she was there to accept a bribe from the club owner. Elsewhere, a woman named Mina, who bears a striking resemblance to Yeonju, is seen being mistreated by her mother-in-law, So Mi-young-won. Because of this, Mina's husband, Sung-woon, tries to stop his mother from continuing her harsh behavior. Meanwhile, Yeonju is called to meet the deputy prosecutor of Division 3, Ryu Sung-dok. At that time, Sung-dok assigns Yeonju to handle a case involving the chairman of Hanja Group, Young-sik, who happens to be Mina's father-in-law. Later, during a family dinner, Mina is busy taking care of her husband's family members while she isn't even allowed to sit at the dining table with them. Mina is treated this way because her mother-in-law, So Mi-young-won, believes she is not worthy of being part of the family due to her background. Furthermore, Young-won expresses her regret for accepting Mina as her daughter-in-law. Elsewhere, Yeonju is asked to assist in handling a case. However, since the perpetrator cannot afford a large bribe, she asks her uncle for help in threatening the suspect. Back at the office, Yeonju is seen telling her team that she will take over the investigation of a painting fraud case. After that, Yeonju recalls her past, where her grandmother was the victim of a hit-and-run, and the perpetrator has yet to be found. Because of this, Yeonju is determined to find the person responsible for her grandmother's death. At the same time, Mina, who is resting, unexpectedly catches Sung-woon with another woman. In a different place, Yeonju and Yoo-jun are seen devising a plan to locate Bong-shik, a suspect who has been missing for a long time. The next day, Young-sik's family holds a celebration, but unfortunately, Mina is not allowed to participate. As Song-ye instructs Mina to attend an art auction hosted by Hanja Group. Unexpectedly, Yeonju also arrives at the auction. Unbeknownst to them both, they are wearing identical outfits in the same color and design. As a result, during the auction, Yeonju starts to realize that she and Mina share an uncanny resemblance. However, Yeonju's attention is diverted when Bong-shik appears at the auction. At that moment, Yeonju attempts to chase him, but in her search for Bong-shik, she is hit by a car. Sometime later, Kyung-shin, the head housekeeper of Young-sik's household, tries to find Mina, who hasn't returned home. Shortly after, Young-sik receives news that Mina's entire family has died in a private plane crash. After reviewing several CCTV recordings, Kyung-shin finds footage of Yeonju's accident, but mistakenly believes it was Mina who was involved in the crash. Several days passed, and all of Mina's family members who were in the plane crash have been found. Unexpectedly, Young-sik attempts to take advantage of the situation by pretending to be kind and offering to handle all the funeral arrangements for her family. On the other hand, Yeonju, who has been in the hospital, finally regains consciousness. At that moment, she becomes confused about why she is in the hospital, surrounded by people who believe she is Mina. Unexpectedly, due to the accident, Yeonju also suffers from amnesia. Meanwhile, Young-sik and Song-ye have devised a plan to ensure that Mina's inheritance does not fall into the hands of anyone else, as her wealth is crucial to Young-sik's business, so they try to hide her condition. Not long after, a man named Sung-woon arrives at the hospital to visit Yeonju. His purpose is to ask Yeonju not to leave the house alone and to not tell anyone about her amnesia. Shortly after, Yeonju attends the funeral of Mina's family. At the event, everyone assumes that Yeonju is Mina, Young-sik's daughter-in-law, even though no one knows the whereabouts of the real Mina. Elsewhere, Haktae and Sung-wook, Young-sik's nephew, are seen devising a plan to prove their suspicions about Young-sik's actions. It turned out, before Sung-wook's father passed away, Mina had been arranged to marry Sung-wook. However, after his father's sudden death in an accident, Mina was instead married to Sung-woon. Additionally, Sung-wook was removed from the list of heirs, despite being the rightful heir of Hanja Group. Sometime later, Yeonju leaves the funeral and begins to investigate Mina's life, where she discovers that Mina is the daughter of Chairman Kang's mistress. Despite coming from a wealthy family, Mina lived an unfortunate life, often being mistreated by her husband's family. Not long after, Sung-wook arrives at the funeral. At that moment, he notices Yeonju eating peanuts and is puzzled because he knows that Mina is allergic to peanuts. Yeonju, unaware of who Sung-wook is, responds rudely to him. Unexpectedly, Yeonju's attitude changes after Sung-wook asks how she has been, as no one had inquired about her condition since she was discharged from the hospital. After the funeral, Young-sik's family, including Yeonju, returns home. While they are gathered, Young-won says something that causes Yeonju to respond harshly. Everyone is shocked by Yeonju's behavior because the Mina they knew would never have answered Young-won in that way. As a result, Sung-woon immediately reprimands Yeonju's actions. Not long after, Kyung-shin meets with Yeonju and gives her a list of household chores that Mina, Sung-woon's wife, is expected to complete. It turns out that although they are married, Sung-woon and Mina sleep in separate rooms. Additionally, Sung-woon asks Yeonju to leave his room. The next day, Kyung-shin wakes Yeonju at 4 a.m. to prepare breakfast for the entire family. At the same time, Yeonju's uncle, who is unaware of her situation, is still waiting for news of her whereabouts. Meanwhile, to prevent the news of Mina's accident and amnesia from spreading, Young-sik fires almost all of the housekeepers working at his home, leaving only Trang and Kyung-shin. Unexpectedly, Trang pretends not to speak Korean, which saves her from being dismissed, as she is believed not to pose a risk of leaking any information. Despite this, Trang confides in Yeonju that she is merely pretending not to understand Korean and asks her to keep it a secret. Not long after, Young-won, Sung-mi, and Jae-hee are discussing Yeonju at the dining table. However, when Yeonju arrives to serve the meal, Young-won instructs Sung-mi and Jae-hee to speak in English, assuming that Mina cannot understand English. Unexpectedly, Yeonju fully understands their conversation, leaving them stunned. Later, while tending to the indoor plants, Trang speaks in Vietnamese, and Yeonju surprisingly responds fluently in Vietnamese as well. Realizing this, they begin discussing Young-won, who is in the same room, much to her frustration since she cannot understand what they are saying. That night, Yeonju overhears the family members of Young-sik discussing how they only care about the inheritance that Mina will receive. Once they get that, they plan to ignore her completely. Angered by their treatment, Yeonju nearly gets caught, but Sung-wook quickly helps her hide. Meanwhile, Young-sik and the rest of the family become suspicious of Yeonju because they notice that she doesn't have a scar on her arm, whereas they know Mina has one. At the same time, Sung-wook meets with Yeonju to ask where the real Mina is. The next day, Yeonju was preparing a meal when, unexpectedly, Mina's aunt, Eunhwa, contacted her. Not wanting to do household chores, Yeonju quickly suggested meeting Eunhwa. When they met, Eunhwa immediately started discussing her family's business with Yeonju. Later that night, upon returning home, Yeonju accused Sung-wook of following her. In response, Sung-wook took her to a cafe and handed over Mina's personal profile documents. He requested that Yeonju memorize all the contents to avoid any mistakes when visiting her father's company. Apparently, there were many people who did not agree with what Yeonju had obtained and might try to take advantage of her amnesiac condition. Back at his apartment, Sung-wook met Haktae and began recounting the events of 2011 when he and his mother went to America. After arriving there, Sung-wook received news that his grandfather had passed away. Additionally, Sung-wook received a message that someone would tell him about an incident from 2007. Not long after, Sung-wook's mother also passed away, and during the funeral, he received his mother's phone, which contained a message saying she was returning to Korea because she didn't want her son to suffer the same mistreatment that had happened to his father and grandfather. From that moment, Sung-wook was determined to return to Korea and restore things to their original state. Meanwhile, Yeonju realized that she wasn't the real Mina, yet she remained determined to fix the situation that Mina had been going through. Elsewhere, Sung-dok was still searching for Yeonju, who was supposed to handle the case involving Young Sik. However, since she had disappeared, Young Sik had to undergo questioning. In the end, Sung-dok asked Yoo-jun to check on her apartment. Unexpectedly, as Yoo-jun was about to enter, he ran into Sung-wook, who lived right next to her apartment. The following day, Sung-wook visited Yeonju, worried that she might not have memorized the documents he had given her. However, his fears were unfounded, as Yeonju had successfully memorized the entire document in just one night. As a result, she attended a meeting to appoint the leader of Yumin Group, Mina's father's company. During the meeting, Mina's status as the head of Yumin Group was announced via news outlets, which was also seen by Young Sik's family members. Even Bong Shik, who had helped the real Mina escape the country by boat, saw the news. However, during the announcement, the district prosecutor's office arrived at the meeting to arrest Yeonju on suspicion of drug use. Amid the chaos, Yeonju suddenly felt dizzy and began recalling some events that had occurred before her accident. At that moment, Sung-wook rushed to help, but Yeonju confessed that she wasn't Mina. Hearing this, Sung-wook revealed that he already knew the truth. At the same time, the central prosecutor's office arrived to protect Yeonju, and Haktae became her legal representative. In short, Yeonju was cleared of drug use, as her urine test came back negative and she was released without any charges. On the other hand, Song-ye, who orchestrated Yeonju's arrest, was furious because her plan to frame Yeonju had failed. At the same time, Young Sik was angry with Sung-dok for not protecting his own daughter-in-law. In short, after being released, Yeonju met with Sung-wook and Haktae. Sung-wook immediately questioned when Yeonju began to realize that she wasn't the real Mina. Yeonju also asked when Sung-wook figured out that she wasn't the real Mina. At that moment, Haktae admitted that he, too, knew that Yeonju wasn't Mina. However, none of them knew her true identity, so they decided that she should continue pretending to be Mina. Soon after, Sung-wook drove Yeonju back to Young Sik's house to gather more information. On the way, Yeonju became frustrated by Sung-wook's accusation that she was lazy and wasn't making any effort to find out what happened to Mina. Upon arriving home, Young Sik, surprisingly, allowed Yeonju to start working at his company and assigned all the household chores to the remaining housekeeper, Jae. At the same time, Sung-wook was seen meeting the wife of the person who hit Yeonju. It turned out that the driver responsible was an employee of a factory owned by Hanja Group that had burned down 14 years ago. Not long after, Yeonju suddenly remembered that when she was at the central prosecutor's office, someone had called her a prosecutor. However, she couldn't picture herself as a prosecutor and instead believed she was a con artist who often pretended to be one. Shortly after, Sung-woon entered Yeonju's room to ask why Sung-wook had dropped her off the day before. Skillfully, Yeonju provided Sung-woon with a reason, but she was left puzzled as to how she had so easily come up with the excuse. The next day, Haktae became Yeonju's personal driver, under the pretext of ensuring that they could carry out their plans smoothly. However, unbeknownst to her, Bong Shik was also at her office. Haktae then reminded Yeonju to be cautious so that her true identity wouldn't be discovered. He also advised her not to go against the company's existing policies. Yet, with her background as a prosecutor, Yeonju was able to implement various policies, which made him regret worrying too much about her. During lunch, Young Sik invited Yeonju to join him. His real intention was to discuss the plan to merge Yumin Group's hotel business with Hanja Group. Meanwhile, Sung-dok met with Yoo-jun and asked him to stop investigating the case Yeonju was handling. However, Yoo-jun immediately rejected his request. While at a restaurant near the prosecutor's office, Sung-dok received news that the restaurant owner had seen Yeonju at the office. Additionally, one of the office employees reported seeing her with a man, which left Sung-dok shocked. After returning to her office, Yeonju met with Sung-wook and explained that she was trying to find out more about Mina's friends. Unfortunately, no one knew anything, so Yeonju planned to return to the gallery Mina had last visited. However, as she was heading to the car, Yeonju suddenly felt dizzy. At that moment, a man approached her. Luckily, Sung-wook arrived just in time to assist her. It turned out the man was a supplier for Yumin Group, trying to ask Yeonju to consider their products. Later, while Yeonju was with Sung-wook, Young Sik unexpectedly showed up. Yeonju quickly came up with an excuse to avoid arousing Young-sik's suspicion about their conversation. On the other hand, Songye went to the gallery to inquire about the paintings Mina had purchased before the accident. At the same time, Yeonju also arrived at the gallery, prompting Songye to ask about the paintings Mina had bought before the incident. According to the gallery director, before the accident, Mina had purchased several paintings under the Young-sik family name, but she also bought one under her own name. However, on the day of the accident, Mina wasn't seen carrying the paintings she had purchased. Elsewhere, Haktae had found a list of phone calls made by the person who hit Yeonju. But when Sungwook tried calling one of the numbers on the list, he saw Songye's personal driver answering the phone. In short, after getting back in the car, Yeonju shared what Songye had said earlier. Likewise, Sungwook told Yeonju that it was possible Songye was behind the accident she experienced. It turns out that Songye's motive for harming Mina was because she had started investigating the fire that occurred 14 years ago at Hanja Group's factory. Moreover, Songye became suspicious when Yeonju's urine test came back negative, as she had been secretly putting drugs into Mina's food for some time. After arriving home, Hyung-shin offered food to Yeonju. At the same time, Sung-woon gave Yeonju a cake, assuring her that it didn't contain any nuts. This immediately made Yeonju realize that Mina had a nut allergy. To confirm this, Yeonju contacted Sungwook, who revealed that the food Kyung-shin had given Yeonju did, in fact, contain nuts. As a result, Sungwook advised Yeonju to pretend to feel ill after eating it. Meanwhile, Songye, who had initially told the gallery director to take a vacation, instead ordered someone to kidnap the director and sell the gallery. Not only that, Songye met with Kyung-shin to ask about Yeonju's condition after being given food with nuts. Unexpectedly, Kyung-shin revealed that she hadn't put any nuts in the food and asked Songye to keep work matters out of the house. At the same time, Yeonju tried to unlock Mina's tablet but was unsuccessful. Elsewhere, Sungwook visited his father's grave, recalling how Young-sik had accused his father of embezzling company funds and burning all the evidence at the Hanja Group factory. The next day, Yeonju met Bong-shik, but he quickly became suspicious that Yeonju wasn't the real Mina due to her awkward behavior. At the same time, Songye also grew suspicious of Yeonju and instructed her subordinate, Do-woo, to search for Mina, but he found nothing. Nevertheless, Do-woo managed to obtain CCTV footage from the auction, revealing Bong-shik's presence. Later, Sung-dok was seen meeting Bong-shik, who had previously helped Bong-shik escape from a fraud case. That night, Yeonju visited Sungwook to celebrate his birthday. Sungwook then shared with Yeonju that his father had died on his birthday, which is why he had lost all desire to celebrate it. Nevertheless, Sungwook still thanked Yeonju for the gesture. Shortly after, unbeknownst to Yeonju, an article appeared online, reporting that she had been having an affair with her husband's cousin. When Young-won found out, she urged Sung-woon to have a child with Mina, so she couldn't leave the family. Back at the house, Yeonju was confronted by Young-won, who scolded her again. Unexpectedly, Songye also arrived and began to grow even more suspicious of Yeonju, requesting that she unlock Mina's device with her fingerprint to prove if she was truly Mina. Fortunately, while at Sungwook's house, Yeonju had discovered that Mina's device pin was his birth date. However, inside Mina's device were numerous notes detailing the crimes and scandals of Young-sik's family. Just before arriving at the house, Yeonju deleted all the notes and reset the device's security using her own fingerprint. The next day, Yeonju met with Kyung-shin, who also suspected that she wasn't the real Mina. However, Kyung-shin warned her that eventually, more people would discover that she was not Mina. Upon arriving at the office, Yoo-jun asked Yeonju to meet with him regarding the investigation into the painting Mina had purchased, as it had disappeared after Yeonju's accident. However, Yeonju, afraid to face Yoo-jun, pretended to be sick and ended up being admitted to the hospital. At the same time, Bong-shik was seen meeting with Songye privately. Soon after, while pretending to be sick, Yeonju grew hungry in the hospital, having only been given a bowl of soup. Unable to bear her hunger, she asked Haktae for help to bring her food, but he immediately refused. Unwilling to give up, Yeonju then called Sungwook, who initially declined but eventually showed up with the food she requested. During their conversation, Some of Yeonju's words and actions reminded Sungwook of a girl he had met during his teenage years. This realization caused Sungwook to abruptly leave. Unbeknownst to Yeonju, someone was secretly taking pictures of her standing by the hospital window, leading to a sensational news story. Not long after, Yeonju decided to visit the district prosecutor's office to meet with Yoojun. However, Young-sik insisted that Yeonju use Jaehee's car, while her own car would be used by Haktae to avoid the reporters. During the trip, the car Yeonju was driving started malfunctioning, making it difficult to control. In the midst of the problem, Yeonju suddenly experienced a headache while driving. Fortunately, Sungwook, who had been accompanying Yeonju from the start, was able to help. Upon arriving at the prosecutor's office, Yoojun began interrogating Yeonju and grew suspicious that she wasn't the real Mina. He even showed her Yeonju's real identification card. Seeing this, Yeonju finally learned her true identity, that she was a prosecutor from the central prosecutor's office. Thankfully, Yoojun promised not to reveal anything about Yeonju's situation. He also agreed to join Sungwook and Haktae in helping until the real Mina was found. Afterward, Yoojun escorted Yeonju to her original apartment, which turned out to be next to Sungwook's apartment. This immediately piqued Sungwook's curiosity about what Yeonju and Yoojun were doing next to his apartment. After returning to Young-sik's house, Yeonju encountered both Young-sik and Young-won. However, Young-won continued scolding Yeonju, accusing her of damaging the family's reputation. Young-sik also urged Yeonju to maintain her behavior, and he decided to dispose of the car Yeonju had been using. Additionally, Young-sik stated that he would handle the rumors, explaining that the accident was caused by a poorly maintained vehicle. Hearing this, Yeonju, suspecting that someone had intentionally tampered with the car, started investigating the garage area. During this time, she met Kyung-shin, who also suspected that someone was trying to harm Yeonju. Kyung-shin, already doubtful of Yeonju's true identity, questioned why she remained in Young-sik's house despite knowing she was in danger. That night, Yeonju received a phone call from her uncle and arranged to meet him the next day. However, instead of her biological uncle, it was her father's men, who was the leader of a gang, showed up. It turns out that after Yeonju's father went to prison and her grandmother passed away, these people had cared for Yeonju until she became a successful prosecutor. Meanwhile, Sungwook visited Yeonju's father in prison, as he was accused of causing the fire at Hanja's factory. At that moment, Sungwook asked who was truly responsible for the incident, to which Yeonju's father replied that there was no point in telling the truth, as no one would believe him. Surprisingly, Sungwook didn't realize that the man he was speaking to was Yeonju's father. The next day, Yeonju went to the central prosecutor's office and met with Sungdok. She was there to request a few months' leave. However, many of her colleagues opposed the idea, as they would have to take over the cases she was supposed to handle. Shortly afterward, Yeonju asked Haktae for help in obtaining data related to the fire at Hanja's factory, which had caused her father's death. By chance, Yeonju ran into Bong-shik, though she didn't recognize him. Bong-shik, on the other hand, followed Yeonju into the office and even continued tailing her into the evening. When Yeonju realized this, Bong-shik suddenly hit her on the head. He even attacked Sungwook when he tried to help her. As a result of the attack, Yeonju was hospitalized, but she regained her memory. In short, despite her condition, Yeonju insisted on going to the prosecutor's office to meet Bong-shik. Sungwook, concerned by her urgency, questioned her about why she was so determined to see Bong-shik. Yeonju then recalled her past after her grandmother's accident, when no one in the police force took the case seriously. She had even learned that a prosecutor had tried to cover up the case. This is what fueled Yeonju's determination to become a prosecutor. It was finally revealed that Sungdok was the prosecutor who covered up Yeonju's grandmother's case, as well as other cases related to Hanja Group. Bong-shik was also involved in various incidents connected to Hanja Group. To gather information on what Sungdok had been doing, Yeonju had been pretending to be friendly toward him. Not long after, Yeonju was seen interrogating Bong-shik. She even revealed her true identity and demanded that Bong-shik choose a side, explaining that she was both a prosecutor and the head of Human Group, meaning she had both wealth and power. Meanwhile, Sungdok met with Young-sik, who asked him to remove Songye's name from the list of those who had been working with Bong-shik. Elsewhere, Yeonju discovered that Bong-shik knew the real Mina. Eventually, Bong-shik confessed that he had helped Mina aboard a ship to China. He also revealed that Song-ye had ordered him to harm Yeonju, regardless of whether she was the real Mina or not. Upon returning home, Young-sik invited Yeonju to have dinner with him for the first time. During the meal, Young-sik once again brought up the business merger between Hanja Group and Human Group, and surprisingly, Song-ye supported the idea, which shocked the other family members. This sudden change in behavior made Yeonju suspicious of their motives. The next day, Bong-shik finally provided a list of people who had collaborated with him. Additionally, he admitted to Yeonju that Song-ye had asked him to remove her name from the list and replace it with Mina's. Yoo-jun also learned that Yeonju's father had been named a suspect in the Hanja Group factory fire case, but Yeonju had not yet revealed this to Sung-wook. Meanwhile, Sung-wook met with Song-ye on behalf of Yeonju to discuss her company's requests, while also questioning the suspicious financials of Hanja Group. This upset Song-ye, as Sung-wook was beginning to act more like his late father. Elsewhere, Yeonju's father was shocked by his daughter's visit when she came to ask why he had set the Hanja factory on fire. Her father then explained that before committed the act, he had told his plans to Yeonju's grandmother, which led her to visit the Hanja factory, where she had her accident. Upon hearing this, Yeonju was filled with anger at what her father had done. Some time later, Yeonju invited Sung-wook to meet and visit the place where her grandmother's ashes were kept. During the visit, Yeonju confessed to Sung-wook that her father was the one who set the Hanja factory on fire, which resulted in his father's death. As a result, Yeonju expressed that she would understand if Sung-wook no longer wanted to be friends with her, knowing that she was the daughter of a murderer. Unexpectedly, Sung-wook assured her that what her father did had nothing to do with her. Despite this, Yeonju still walked away from Sung-wook. After returning to her office, Yeonju received a call from Song-ye, but she refused to answer. At the same time, Sung-wook confided everything to Hak-tae, but he was frustrated that Yeonju had decided to cut off communication with him. Later that evening, Hak-tae drove Yeonju back to Young-sik's house. During the drive, he urged Yeonju to keep acting as she had before, reminding her that her father's actions had no connection to her. Hak-tae also encouraged Yeonju to reconnect with Sung-wook. Upon arriving at Young-sik's house, Yeonju found some suspicious medication. Inside the house, Song-ye was seen asking Kyung-shin for her opinion about Yeonju, but she refused to get involved in matters between Song-ye and Yeonju. This only angered Song-ye, who reminded Kyung-shin that she was just a servant in their household. Unexpectedly, Kyung-shin brought up all the services she had provided to the Young-sik family, leaving Song-ye speechless. Meanwhile, Bong-shik, who was in prison, had difficulty meeting with Yeonju. As a result, he pretended to be sick in hopes of being taken out of his cell, but instead, he was given a drug that made him unconscious and was moved to an isolation room. While in isolation, Bong-shik was injured and made to appear as though he had attempted to do something unthinkable. Afterward, the perpetrator left a list of names of those who had collaborated with him, and Mina's name was on that list. This left Yeonju even more confused about the situation, leading her to go to a bar to drink. At the same time, Yoo-jun, who had learned about this, went looking for Yeonju and even confessed his feelings to her. Unbeknownst to them, Sung-wook overheard their conversation but left before hearing her response. It turned out that Yeonju rejected Yoo-jun's feelings. Shortly after, Yeonju returned to her apartment while drunk but struggled to open the door, eventually sending an emergency message to Sung-wook. Seeing this, Sung-wook rushed to find Yeonju, who had fallen asleep in front of her apartment door. Fortunately, Sung-wook managed to open the door and helped her inside. However, in her half-conscious state, Yeonju tried to push him away, but Sung-wook assured her that he would never leave her, no matter what. Unexpectedly, Yeonju suddenly kissed him. The next morning, Yeonju realized that she hadn't returned to Young-sik's house, but had gone to her own apartment instead. In short, as she was heading to work, she ran into Sung-wook again. This made Yeonju recall what had happened the night before, but she told Sung-wook that she didn't remember anything. Upon arriving at the office, Yeonju met with Sung-dok, who asked her to conduct an investigation into Mina and gave her only 3 days to summon her to the prosecutor's office. Sung-dok also asked Yoo-jun to provide data on Mina, but Yoojun admitted that he had very little information. Shortly after, Young Sik called Sung-dok, but Sung-dok suspected that Young Sik was behind Bong Shik's death, although he was confused by the accusation. Meanwhile, Sung-wook met with Kyung-shin, who revealed that 14 years ago, before his father died, she had been very close to both Sung-wook's father and Young Sik. She had even acted as a spy for both of them. After Sung-wook's father passed away, Kyung-shin felt guilty, believing that the information she provided might have contributed to the tragedy. Since then, Kyung-shin had remained neutral within Young Sik's family. She also told Sung-wook that Young Sik was willing to work with him and abandon Songye. Elsewhere, Songye planned to fire many employees from Hanja Hotel, which led to employee protests. Unexpectedly, Songye pretended to apologize, claiming that her actions were due to pressure from Yumin Hotel. As a result, the protesters shifted their demonstration to Yumin Hotel, where they threw eggs at Yeonju, mistaking her for Mina. Following this incident, Sung-woon reported the protesters to the police. However, the case was assigned to Yeonju as the prosecutor, requiring her to interrogate the offenders. After hearing the explanation from the protesters, Yeonju was frustrated with the conflict between Yumin Hotel and Hanja Hotel, which disregarded the well-being of the employees. As a result, Yeonju decided to meet with the company representatives to discuss the matter. On the other hand, Haktae informed Sung-wook that Yeonju had been asked to summon Mina to the prosecutor's office for questioning, where she would be transferred to a rural office. Upon hearing this, Sung-wook met with Young Sik and accepted his offer to side with him. Consequently, without considering Songye, Yumin Hotel and Hanja Hotel were officially merged under Sung-wook's leadership, with Young Sik as vice president. Sung-woon was appointed as the managing director, and the summons for Mina by the prosecutor's office was cancelled. Songye, upon learning about the decision, was furious with her father for changing the terms of the agreement without her knowledge. As a result, during the merger ceremony, Songye was largely ignored, while Sung-woon gave the opening speech. At that moment, Yeonju also discovered that Sung-wook had transferred 10% of his shares to Hanja Group. She immediately confronted Sung-wook and realized that 14 years ago, she had met him. Upon learning this, Sung-wook realized that the woman he had loved all along wasn't Mina, but Yeonju, the girl he met 14 years ago. They ended up kissing once again. Not long after, Haktae met with Yeonju and Sung-wook, offering to drive them home. During the ride, Haktae mentioned that there was urgent news about Mina. It turned out that Sung-woon's former lover, So-hee, had published a report claiming that Mina, the head of Yumin Group, was an imposter. At the same time, Songye learned about the news and expressed her agreement with So-hee. Songye even convinced Mina's aunt, Eunhwa, to conduct a DNA test to confirm it. On the other hand, Do-woo was still searching for the real Mina and even contacted the gang members who had once been defeated by Yeonju. Sometime later, Yeonju returned to Young Sik's house to gather information about the prosecutor who frequently collaborated with him in handling Hanja Group's cases. At the same time, Songye sneaked into Yeonju's room to collect a DNA sample. Fortunately, Yeonju arrived just in time, followed by Sung-woon, who came to defend Yeonju, which left Songye frustrated. After Songye left, Sung-woon revealed to Yeonju that he knew she wasn't the real Mina, but he didn't mind because, thanks to her, he had secured his position. Yeonju then warned him that if she wasn't the real Mina and didn't need the wealth and position, Sung-woon would also lose his standing. Therefore, Sung-woon needed to help her keep the secret. The next day, Sung-wook asked Yeonju to come to the hospital because the person who hit her had regained consciousness. However, the culprit claimed that he had been in need of money at the time and had contacted someone from Hanja Group. He insisted that he hadn't meant to hit Yeonju, but his epilepsy had suddenly flared up, causing him to lose control of the car. Despite his explanation, both Yeonju and Sung-wook suspected that he was lying to cover something up. In short, Yeonju tried to contact Yoojun to request the files on the Hanja factory fire case. However, this made Sung-wook feel jealous. Meanwhile, Songye had acquired a new assistant named Eun-young and became increasingly suspicious of Yeonju's behavior. At the same time, Yeonju continued to search for information about Bong Shik's activities to obtain a list of the people who were truly working with him. Not long after, Do-woo approached Sukho, the person who had hit Yeonju. Fortunately, before Do-woo could harm him, Sung-wook entered Suk-ho's hospital room, causing Do-woo to flee. Despite the murder attempt, Hanja Hospital refused to release the CCTV footage, making it difficult for the police to find the perpetrator. However, during the investigation, Haktae found a syringe containing poison, which was meant to harm Suk-ho. As a result, Sung-wook decided to hide him, and eventually, Suk-ho confessed that he had initially been hired by Do-woo to harm Mina. He was also told to make a false confession regarding the Hanju factory fire 14 years ago. Unexpectedly, Yeonju's father wasn't the one responsible for the fire. In fact, he had helped the factory workers escape. Strangely, her father had lied and claimed to be the culprit. This realization left Yeonju filled with regret, as she had believed her father was the real perpetrator. Sung-wook then urged Yeonju to confront her father and ask what really happened. Elsewhere, Song-ye met with Sung-woon and warned him that he would soon be arrested for drug use. Apparently, Song-ye had given him the drugs and now threatened to release compromising videos of him. Song-ye also demanded that Sung-woon tell her who Yeonju really was, as she had secretly planted a listening device and overheard their earlier conversations. Meanwhile, Yeonju and Sung-wook finally met with her father, who admitted that he had been asked to take the blame for the fire. In exchange, he was paid by someone claiming to work for Hanja Group, and he used that money to support Yeonju's life and education. It was also revealed that Sung-wook had frequently met with Yeonju's father without her knowledge, which convinced her father to reveal the truth. It was disclosed that before the fire 14 years ago, Yeonju's father had been a factory worker at Hanju. However, he was wrongfully fired and had made a threat to burn down the factory, even though he had no intention of doing so. When the fire actually happened, everyone immediately blamed him. As a result, Yeonju's father was arrested, and while in jail, Do-woo offered him hush money to confess to the crime. On the other hand, due to continuous threats from Song-ye, Sung-woon finally revealed that Mina, whom they knew, was actually Yeonju. At the same time, Sung-dok discovered that Yeonju was the daughter of the man accused of the Hanju factory fire. Sometime later, Yeonju and Sung-wook visited her father again and heard the true story. It turned out that Yeonju's father had previously been imprisoned for a violence case, but was released and worked at the Hanju factory. Unfortunately, he was accused of theft and fired. Angered by the false accusation, he intended to burn the severance pay from Hanja Group, but Yeonju's grandmother stopped him. As a result, he abandoned his plan and went to see Yeonju's grandmother, but instead, he saw the factory on fire. When he arrived at the scene, he also found that the Hanju factory's financial records were burning. Hearing this reminded Sung-wook of when his father died. Young-sik had claimed that Yeonju's father had deliberately set fire to the financial records. However, if the records were found outside the room where Sung-wook's father died, it meant someone else had burned them, making Yeonju's father the scapegoat and causing his father to become a victim. Shortly after, Sung-wook, Yoo-jun, and Yeonju went to the fire department that had handled the Hanju factory fire to speak with the firefighter who had been on duty. According to the firefighter, when they found Sung-wook's father, he was already burned, but strangely, there were no signs of an attempt to escape. Meanwhile, Song-ye proceeded with a DNA test to prove Yeonju's true identity and asked Eun-hwa to announce the results at the shareholders meeting. As time passed, Yeonju, Sung-wook, and Yoo-jun continued to investigate what happened during the Hanju factory fire. They planned to find additional witnesses. Eventually, Yeonju revealed that she, too, was a witness since she had been near the factory when she found her grandmother after the accident. However, Yeonju couldn't remember the event, so Yoo-jun suggested that she undergo therapy to recall what happened 14 years ago. After therapy, Yeonju remembered seeing a car pass by just before she found her grandmother. It turned out that the car belonged to Young-sik and had been destroyed the day after the Hanju factory fire. Left with no other choice, Yeonju devised a plan for Sung-wook to attend the memorial for Young-sik's eldest son and subtly bring up the incident involving Sung-wook's father. Unexpectedly, Young-sik created an alibi, claiming he wasn't at the scene, with Kyung-shin as a witness to support his story. At the same time, Sung-dok summoned Yoo-jun and warned him to stop investigating the Hanju factory case, even threatening to destroy Yoo-jun's family business. Shortly after, during the memorial for Young-sik's eldest son, Songye revealed to the entire family that the Mina with them was not the real Mina, shocking everyone. As a result, the shareholders meeting was held, and Eunhwa also disclosed the DNA test results that had been conducted without Yeonju's knowledge. Unexpectedly, the results showed that Yeonju was 99.99% the real Mina, leaving Songye and Mina's aunt disappointed. Despite this, Yeonju announced her resignation from her position as head of Human Group and transferred all of her shares to Sungwook, who was then appointed as the leader of Human Group. Apparently, this had been part of a plan by Sungwook, Yeonju, and Haktae to ensure that Yeonju could leave Young-sik's house and stop pretending to be Mina. On the other hand, Songye's actions frustrated Young-sik, as he felt that all her efforts had been useless, which made him angry as well. With this, Yeonju, Sungwook, and Haktae were able to devise a plan to expose the crimes committed by Hanja Group. They even used Sungwook's apartment as their headquarters. In addition, Yeonju sought help from Mr. Park, the head of the investigation team. Yoojun and Yeonju's uncle also tapped Sungdok's phone to gather evidence of Young-sik's involvement. Soon after, their plan took shape as Haktae decided to leave Hanja Group to assist more freely. However, that night, Sungwoon came to Sungwook's apartment, offering to team up against Songye, but Sungwook immediately refused. Meanwhile, Songye grew frustrated because she couldn't fully control Hanja Group, as her father still held the leadership position. Nevertheless, she continued planning to remove her father from his position, regardless of the means. The next day, news broke on the internet about Sungdok's involvement in a corruption case, which had been orchestrated by Yeonju and her team. Sungdok, furious at her, realized he had no evidence to prove Yeonju and her team were behind it. Desperate to protect his career as a prosecutor, Sungdok reached out to Young-sik. Initially, Young-sik didn't want anything to do with him, but Sungdok reminded him of their shared involvement in corruption. On the other hand, Yeonju, who had tapped Sungdok's phone, learned that he had been hiding evidence related to the case involving Young-sik. As a result, Yeonju secretly entered his office to find out where he was hiding the evidence. While searching, Songye unexpectedly entered the room. Luckily, Yeonju managed to hide and overheard a conversation between Songye and Sungdok discussing the incident involving Yeonju's grandmother, where the culprit was revealed to be Songye. Additionally, Songye had come to ask Sungdok to arrest Young-sik, so he could gain a higher position in Hanja Group, but Sungdok instead asked Songye to eliminate Yeonju. Meanwhile, Sungwook met with Kyung-shin, asking her to stop working for Young-sik. However, Kyung-shin revealed to Sungwook that she was certain Young-sik wasn't at the location when his father died because she had found a bug belonging to Young-sik. Furthermore, the person actually present at the scene of the accident was Songye. Back at the house, Yeonju met with Sungwook, who told her what Kyung-shin had revealed about Songye's actions. Shortly afterward, Yeonju received news from Yoojun that Young-sik had been arrested for bribery and corruption. At the same time, Songye intentionally avoided finding a way to free her father, aiming instead to take control of his office. Shortly afterward, Yeonju handed over a flash drive she had found in Sungdok's office, containing CCTV footage of the incident involving her grandmother. However, Yeonju was informed that she had been suspended from her duties due to a lawsuit filed by Eunhwa. Elsewhere, Songye became curious about what evidence Sungdok had regarding the events from 14 years ago and questioned Doo-woo about it. It was revealed that Songye had been responsible for the incident involving Sungwook's father 14 years ago, but she tried to persuade Doo-woo to help her cover it up. In short, Sungwook confronted Songye, asking her to leave Yeonju alone, but Songye warned that his own position wasn't secure either. At that moment, Sungwook received news that the person who had hit Yeonju had been found dead, even though he had been helping that person hide so they could testify that Songye was behind the incident. On the other hand, Yoojun informed Yeonju that someone had confessed to being responsible for harming Sungwook's father. The person was Doo-woo, so Yoojun immediately interrogated him. Unexpectedly, Doo-woo confessed to being the one who injured Sungwook's father, set fire to the Hanja factory, and was the mastermind behind the incident involving Yeonju's grandmother. Despite this, Yoojun didn't fully believe him. In short, news about Yeonju spread widely, and reporters tried to meet with her. As a result, Yeonju and Sungwook found themselves trapped inside their home, unable to leave due to the crowd of reporters waiting outside their apartment. Not long after, Haktae discovered a package for Sungwook without a sender's name. The package contained a flash drive with evidence of corruption involving Songye. With no other options, Yeonju suggested to Sungwook that they urgently find the real Mina, who held the key to everything. Likewise, Youngwon, Sungwoon, and Songmi were also eager to discover the whereabouts of the real Mina. Meanwhile, Songye grew suspicious of her assistant, Eunyoung. She even asked Eunyoung to eat peanuts to test whether she was the real Mina, knowing that she had a peanut allergy. Fortunately, Sungwook and Yeonju realized her plan and intervened to help Eunyoung, who was actually the real Mina after undergoing facial surgery to avoid recognition. After escaping from Songye's henchmen, Eunyoung finally met with Yeonju. At that moment, Yeonju explained that she and Sungwook had only recently realized that Eunyoung had suddenly become Songye's personal assistant following the accident involving Mina. Not long after, Songye's men found Yeonju and Eunyoung. At that moment, Yeonju fought back, but unfortunately, Eunyoung was attacked. When the police arrived, they immediately arrested Yeonju and took her to the police station, while Eunyoung was sent to the hospital. Following this incident, news spread about the return of the real Mina, as well as Songye being appointed as the leader of Hanja Group. While still in custody, Young-sik asked Sungwoon for help, but Sungwoon refused, not wanting to be involved with Songye. Sometime later, Sungwook visited Yeonju at the police station, explaining that he had asked Eunhwa to help secure her release, in exchange for handing over all of his shares. Unfortunately, Yeonju couldn't do much, as she had already been dismissed from the prosecutor's office. Elsewhere, Sungdok met with Songye, but she no longer wanted to work with him. Upon returning to his office, Sungdok encountered Yeonju, who informed him that she would sue him for covering up the hit-and-run case involving Songye. Eventually, Yeonju and her colleagues devised a plan to stop all the criminal activities orchestrated by Young-sik. In addition, Sungwook brought Yeonju the recording that Kyung-shin had previously shown him. When Sungwook tried to contact Haktae, he discovered that Haktae had already met with Songye. In short, Sungwook met with Young-sik, but he refused to work with Young-sik to bring down Songye. Soon after, Yeonju and her team were ready to expose all the crimes committed by the Hanja Group leader and reveal the truth. As a result, when Yeonju met with Songye, she immediately revealed a recording pen in her hand, while Haktae also stepped out of the same car as Songye. A few days passed, and Yeonju contacted Haktae, but she was given a drink laced with a sedative. When she regained consciousness, Yeonju found herself with Songye, who continued pressuring her to admit to everything she had done. However, Songye claimed that she had only given orders for everything that had happened. After hearing this, Yeonju revealed that everything Songye had just said had been broadcast live. It turned out that Haktae's decision to stay close to Songye wasn't a betrayal, but part of a plan devised by Yeonju and her team. Frustrated, Songye stormed off. Luckily, Haktae had gathered enough evidence to implicate Songye. As a result, Do-woo, who had previously confessed to injuring Sungwook's father, changed his statement and revealed that all the crimes were orchestrated by Songye. It turned out that Do-woo had been loyal to Songye because she had been paying for his sister's kidney failure treatments. However, Sungwook and Kyung-shin discovered that his sister could have had surgery to cure her condition, but Songye had sabotaged the process to keep Do-woo dependent on her. Soon after, Hanja Group requested that the TV station refrain from airing any news about them, but So-e went ahead and reported the story anyway. At the same time, Songye was left with no one to turn to and could only accept her fate. Not long after, Eunyoung, the real Mina, finally regained consciousness, so Yeonju and Sungwook went to see her. At that moment, Mina explained that she planned to report all the crimes involving the Hanja Group family members, except for Youngwon, as she intended to reveal the secret to her personally. In short, Mina met with Youngwon to disclose that the cause of her eldest son's death was the pet shampoo donated by Songye. The shampoo contained harmful ingredients for people with asthma. Unfortunately, her son's inhaler went missing during the incident, which led to his death. Mina also revealed that Youngwon's youngest son, Sungwoon, knew about it but remained silent out of fear of Songye. Due to the incidents involving the Hanja Group family, a shareholders meeting was called. During the meeting, Kyung-shin, who was one of the largest shareholders, thanks to Sung-wook's grandfather, cast a decisive vote. The final decision was that none of Young-sik's family members would be allowed to lead the company again. Unexpectedly, when the police went to arrest Song-ye, they found a body resembling her, floating in a lake after she had faked her own death. Shortly afterward, Sung-wook was appointed as the new leader of Hanja Group. Unfortunately, Song-ye's plan to escape prison by faking her death was foiled when the body found by the police was examined by Yeonju. Sometime later, Mina became the head of Human Group, while Song-mi, Sung-woon, Young-won, and Jae had to rebuild their businesses from scratch. Soon after, Young-sik and Sung-dok were imprisoned, while Yeonju went to America to continue her studies as a prosecutor, and the story came to an end. Moral lesson from the story: if you can't remember what happened last night, don't worry, you might still end up the CEO of a company. Also, if people start throwing eggs at you, it's probably time to change your identity or at least your outfit.